let's talk about the war on terror as it translates to the British context. So, as we were told by the 2021 census, there are 3.9 million Muslims in the UK, which makes them 6.5% of the population. And
Spite.
67% of the terror attacks since 2018.
Amazing.
So, you might think that when...
I mean, you can find even more shocking statistics. So if you go back to 1998, over a quarter of all terror suspects arrested have been of asylum, mainly Muslim background.
Yeah.
So this is like, I mean, in the last few years, but if you blow it up to even back 20, 30 years ago, it's still quite significant.
Yeah. And so they're 3/4 of MI5's caseload.
75%.
Yeah.
75% of MI5's time is spent on Islamists.
On this 6.5% demographic.
It's incredible that we tolerate this, but Muslim majority countries don't tolerate this.
No, they don't tolerate it because they're not stupid.
Yeah.
But we're really stupid. Sorry to interrupt the video, but I just want to let you know that we have a brand new selection of merch on our merch store. These won't be in store forever, so if you do want them, go and get them now. Thanks very much. But the thing is, I think this just comes down to two different approaches, right? So their approach is the kind of Bukalian, let's incisively get in there, deal with the problem, and then that's the problem over. Whereas ours is kind of like the Russian approach to war, where we just take it and take it and take it until eventually the enemy runs out of bullets, right? And then we win.
Yeah. Which is a military strategy that's only worked in about 50% of the wars that the Russians have had. So we're literally gambling with our future.
Well, yeah, I mean, something like that. But yeah, so this is the UK's Counterterrorism Report for 2023. Came out late last year. And they say, well, look, this is costing us billions a year. 67% of the attacks have come from this one community, 3/4 of the MI5 caseload, and 64% of those in custody for terrorism-connected offences are coming from those communities. And so if we were to look at, say, the prescribed terror groups in the United Kingdom, it's vaguely reflective of that. So you can...
So that's the law.
Yeah, so that's the law. And then, we get to...
some of the groups.
Yeah, there's a Sikh one there, which is interesting. But...
I don't see any Catholic ones.
I mean,
Abu Nidal Organization,
yeah.
Abu Saif Group, Al-Astir Brigades, Al-Jamaat Al-Islamiyah.
It's just a lot of owls.
It just gets you get to the ill.
Yeah.
Answer, Abad Ali, Atomwaffen. There we are.
Boko Haram.
Yeah. Egyptian Islamic Jihad, but there is a Nazi one there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the funny thing about the far right ones, because I've looked at this, is they're usually like this American lunatic group exists.
Or Norwegian, actually. There was one founded by a Norwegian guy.
But it's like, okay, but no one in the UK is a member or cares.
Yeah.
I mean, cool.
But at least we can still find it our hearse to prescribe Germans.
Global Islamic Media Front.
Yeah. Again,
it's incredible that with a quick Google search, you can see how the scales or the magnitude of the threat are so clearly coming from one particular sort of community or group or whatever.
Yeah.
And yet, when our politicians talk, you would never get that sense. It's like, are you familiar with your own government's legislation?
Yeah.
Hezbollah, Hizb ut-Tahrir. They're new on the list.
Indian Mujahideen. Oh, okay.
Yep. Islamic Army of Adin, Islamic Jihad Union, Islamic Movement, Islamic State.
Yeah.
Jamaat al-Muhammad.
I mean, again...
Jamaat al-Sabal... I mean, I'm sorry, but that was
impressive.
A million names in there.
But again, as you can see, there is a slight
difference.
National Action.
National Action. Found it.
Don't clap.
Yeah.
No.
You do not want that clipped.
I mean, we found another right-wing one instead of just all Muslims.
Yeah.
Well, they look like they hate everyone.
Yeah,
they're racist, anti-Semitic, homophobic. They just need like a couple more and they're good.
So there's a weird thing here with them as well. They're banned.
Weirdly, not Islamophobic.
Yeah, which is weird.
But the rest of them, they're all banned for like committing terrorism. These guys are banned for a tweet, which was interpreted as terrorism.
Yeah.
Which is a call to action. But again, I mean, not many bombs.
Yeah. Lamenting the murder of Joe Cox instead.
I think you mean celebrating.
Celebrating.
I mean, that's a communist one. They're the
Partiya
Kurdistan Workers Party.
They're all in Turkey.
Yes.
None of them are in the UK.
Yeah.
And in fact, these are all communist ones. Actually,
Revolutionary.
Left-wing nationalists. Marxist Leninists. Again,
Salafist group. Well, that was the end of it.
Yeah. But
Pakistan.
Oh, look, there's
Pakistanis have a huge problem. Most of these groups are from Pakistan.
Yeah.
How do they even identify them or differentiate?
So I think the point's been made that there are 3 far right ones and like 100.
Oh, there's Wagner Group.
That's
4.
a Russian one, though, isn't it? Yeah.
4.
A bunch of Russians that don't exist.
Out of 60.
I'm not sure we can consider the Russian group a far right group from Western standards because they're
Okay, 3 and a
also
half.
just don't exist anymore. They even got murdered in Russia.
But anyway, so
No, their leader just had a plane crash. It's like, as you
of
do.
course.
Yeah, exactly.
the general thesis from the establishment, and this is the politicians, the media, the academics, any talking head you'll ever find on TV is, well, look, terrorism is obviously bad. We have to agree with that. But there's no connection between terrorism and any community. Terrorism has no community. It's just something that happens. There's no
in isolation.
For.
Exactly.
And in fact, what we need to do is make sure that we don't ever blame a community for terrorism.
It's good stand-up, man.
Good stand-up.
I am steel manning their position as much as I can, and that this is something they say. And so recently, the latest attempt at this has been, I think, rather macabre because it's just, I mean, there are certain levels of don't look back in anger that actually start to really annoy me. And it's when the British government starts employing the victims of the Islamic terror attacks. This really, really annoys me. In fact,
it's like pro-level gaslighting.
Yeah. Yeah. So apparently more than 50 victims of Islamist-inspired terror attacks have signed a joint letter against what they describe as anti-Muslim hate.
You don't have to do this.
Yeah.
You don't have
I don't care how much pressuring you or paying you. You don't have to do this.
Maybe it's like a form of conversion. Like, some of the victims of the royal and grooming gangs have become like staunchly, like devoutly Christian. And so there's maybe their coping mechanism. So maybe the government's like, you can hit out this new religion of like supreme gaslighting.
Maybe
your new coping strategy.
I just kind of hate it. So there's this charity called Survivors Against Terror who wrote a letter, and I'm just going to read it because it's just, while this is the way that things are done, nothing can ever get better. As victims and survivors of terror attacks that were driven by Islamist extremism, we are all only too aware of its threat. It has had a devastating impact on our own lives and killed the people we love. Fighting it and defeating it should be a national priority. To defeat this threat, the single most important thing we can do is to isolate the extremists and terrorists from the vast majority of British Muslims who deplore such violence. How do we do that?
Mm-hmm. I'm assuming they're going to prescribe how to do that soon.
No, they don't.
That's true.
That's the entire.
Oh no, then it's a synopsis of what's going on.
No, that's the entire letter there.
Just hang on.
The thing is, like, are we incapable of having a mature and frank conversation? Okay, yes, there is anti-Muslim hatred, but clearly the vast majority of the threat that society faces in terms of terrorism is coming from one specific group of people. Can we not say that?
Nope.
And when polled, what are their opinions? Because that claim that the vast majority of Muslims abhor this stuff. Okay, we'll poll them.
Well, but the thing is, there is there's research on this. Like, it's clear as day, and it's usually, and no surprise, there are groups that are the most poorly integrated in Britain that don't bother even learning English. Which like you have to learn English, presumably, to get a British passport. But you can live in England for decades and not know how to drive because you can't speak English. Not even bother speaking English. Not even adopting certain values, let alone teaching them to your kids. I mean, it's incredible. It's so brazen as well. And I'm just thinking to myself, you realize you can't do this in like literally anywhere else. You certainly can't go to India and do this. You can't go to Nigeria and do this. But somehow
in Arabia can you have the kind of stuff
honestly
our mosques that they wouldn't accept it.
Honestly.
But anyway, so they say in recent weeks there have been too many cases, and this is the real issue. Politicians have been sidling closer and closer to the line of saying, guys, I think I've located the problem.
The government department did give me that report.
Yeah. Too many cases where politicians and others have failed to do this, in some cases equating being Muslim with being an extremist, facilitating anti-Muslim hate or failing to challenge it.
No one's done
you know what Rishi Sunak's speech was like? He was like, when you go to a playground and you have that teacher being like, kids separate, stop it. It's like treating it like that. Like everyone's bad, everyone's naughty, like wagging their finger. I'm like, clearly, 15 stone, built like a brick shit house is a bigger threat to like the 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Like clearly there's a disparity.
40-year-old man.
Exactly.
Beating the crap out of
there is a disparity here.
There are faults on both sides.
Exactly. 5-year-olds, stop it. Stop throwing your, like, I don't know, dummy at him.
And that's basically what this comes down to. Because, of course, Rishi Sunak came out and said, well, Islamist extremism and the far right, basically the same problem that we're facing. And in fact, they carry on. They say this is not only wrong in itself, but it makes the job of Islamist extremists easier and plays into the hands of terrorists. We also know where anti-Muslim hate can lead. This month is the 5th anniversary of the horrific far-right terror attack in Christchurch, New Zealand, that killed 51 Muslims at 2 mosques.
Yeah, how was that caused?
That's interesting, isn't it? Because that's the only act of actual terrorism they call out in this letter.
How was it caused?
And most of the terrorism that other Muslims face are from other Muslims.
Yes, that's true.
Actually, about 99%. I'm just, putting a figure out there.
I'm sorry, but literally, how was that one terrorist attack caused?
That's a good point, actually. I don't remember.
There was a particular attack. Wasn't it the Bataclan Massacre or something like that?
No. Why did that guy in New Zealand go and do what he did?
Because he was crazy.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows, because you remember at the time.
They're just associated with a far right, which now I don't even know what does far right mean now?
I don't know, and I'm afraid to find out.
The guy published a manifesto literally laying out why he did it. And the media went with Candace Owens is at fault.
Yes.
You may remember.
Oh, PewDiePie as well.
PewDiePie and Candace Owens did this.
I'm so glad I didn't know this, because I would despair for humanity even more.
The real reason is that he traveled the world, including a lot of Muslim nations, and they came out of it as an anti-Muslim.
No, he went to France.
Yeah, he went to France.
That's not the best.
As I said, he went to the Muslim
endorsement.
Going to France radicalized him.
And he became a radical anti-Muslim hating person. And okay, but that's how that happened. He did not listen to Rishi Sunak.
No.
He did not listen to Lee Anderson. Like, stop.
I did not know this.
This doesn't follow.
Yes, but anyway, so they say, well, Islamist-inspired extremism is our country's most pressing terror threat. I like that. While, let's take that and put that over
the most pressing.
Yeah. They admit, okay, it's undeniable that
75%.
Yeah, I mean, but we'll take that and we'll put that to the side. It is not the only one.
Oh, okay. So it's conceding that it is.
Let's equivocate, because we've already talked about a far-right terror attack. Let's talk about more far-right terror attacks, because that's the real issue. But what I love about this is that they're just admitting, look, we can't talk to those people. Like, there's no reasoning with people on that side, the majority issue. There's no reason, but maybe we can reason with this minority issue over here. So,
but the thing is, how they talk about isolating these extremists, fine. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's the unanswerable question, isn't it? But they say that it's not the only one, and responding to it by feeding far-right extremism, dividing our communities and exaggerating the risk will feed a cycle of extremism that put more people at risk. Signed by 58 survivors of the following: 15 different terror attacks, Bali, 7th of July bombings, the Bataclan Paris attack, the Fishmongers Hall in London, Forbury Gardens Reading, ISIS Syria, Israel, London Bridge, Manchester Arena, Brussels. I mean, the list goes on, and they're all.
I don't think they got people from all of these.
Sorry, did they not see the problem with doing that? Here's this one far right terror attack. By the way, we're all survivors of blah 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 blah.
And what's the commonality of all those 15 other attacks? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I don't think they got people from every single one of these. I refuse to believe that.
No, they did. They've got the signatures underneath.
Wow.
But,
yeah.
It's
a lot of attacks, isn't it?
It's really atrocious to try and weaponize the victims of these attacks.
This is like Brassai.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is like a Brassai sketch.
Yeah.
It's like loads of us who have all been victims of this one group, we're here to call out a different group that engaged in a very small amount of this.
We're here to call out anti-Muslim hate, because what they're saying is, look, just because that happens, just because this keeps happening.
The real problem is the far right.
I wouldn't even have a problem with this if they actually gave us a solution.
Well, you're not allowed to allow this to stigmatize a particular community, right? That's what they're saying. You are not allowed to have a particular opinion about this community because of all of this terrorism.
I'm sorry, I can't get over looking at that.
And to be honest with you, as a member of the far right community, I don't want them stigmatizing me because of that.
I'm not Australian for one.
So what does stigmatized look like? Asking questions, being critical? Idea. I mean, and how do you
quote anti-Muslim hate?
How do you identify that? What exactly does
I don't
an
know.
anti-Muslim hater look like?
I guess anti-Muslim hate would look like.
Well, what does a hater look like? Because we know what the KKK looks like.
They all have Donald Trump not allowing Muslim immigration from like 8 different Muslim countries.
Somalia.
Yeah, that's like anti-Muslim hate, I think. Because I mean, like a sensible government policy would be like to look at a particular community and say, right, okay, that's been disproportionately disruptive to the national life. It's costing us millions of pounds. There's a huge amount of benefits that go to the community. Maybe we'll be a bit more selective about where we take immigrants.
Yeah.
Right, but that would be racism. So
you know the most annoying thing that I hear when people are like, "Oh, but if they change their immigration policy, you wouldn't have been allowed to come in or whatever." I'm like, "Oh, you know what? You're right. I want the country to base its immigration policy based on my personal circumstances." That sounds like a great way to run a country.
But again, it's not to say that no people can come in. It's just that you can
vet them, like having a door in your own house where you vet people that
discerning.
Yeah,
right? That's the thing, and we're not discerning, and people are dying, and then the survivors of these attacks have got to come out and go, look, guys, don't be racist. It's like, okay.
But this is like a huge group of Europeans who are all victims of fascist aggression from the Germans, right? Getting together and saying that, I don't know.
Anti-German hate
is terrible.
Well, worse than that, because they won't condemn the anti-German. They're not concerned about the Germans who have murdered all the family. Instead, they're concerned about, I don't know, Spanish imperialism.
Also, that's not a very good example because they found the anti-Muslim hate can lead. Because they found basically the only example of a non-Muslim or someone identifying with that faith attacking majority Muslim people. They found like literally the only example.
Yeah,
and don't they find the irony? Don't they see the irony there?
There have been like 2 or 3 other ones, but it's very, very small in comparison to the amount of caseload work.
I just don't understand what the like.
Yeah, the ones on the screen.
I mean, yeah.
Anyway. So this is the organization, Survivors Against Terror. Apparently they were launched in 2018, which I'm slightly skeptical of, as we'll get to in a minute. But they were launched as a network of terror survivors.
Okay.
Against people who've been attacked by terror, just undifferentiated,
just terror,
floating terror concept. Yeah. I mean, the fact that they've all been terrorized by a particular ideology is not something that we're going to talk about. But their funding comes from donations by the public as well as from trusts, foundations, because they're a registered charity. Now, if you're a registered charity, that means that your financial situation has to be made public. And so you can go to the government and have a look. And this is interesting because I can't see it. So I can't see who's paying the victims of these terror attacks to tell everyone not to be Islamophobic. Apparently, this is a newly registered
charity. Yeah, and it doesn't need to update
its information until 10 months have passed after the first financial period. So,
first financial period, but this 2018.
Yeah,
surely you should have had a few financial periods by now. Maybe about 5.
It's every year, actually. So they must have been founded about 1.5 years ago at most, I would suggest.
Yeah, or wow, this is interesting.
So they're lying.
I don't know.
Well, clearly they're lying.
I'm not saying they're lying. I'm just saying. I mean, it could be a bureaucratic issue on the back end. I mean, we are dealing with the government's charity commission here.
If they were founded in 2018,
I don't know.
The last 5 years, whoopsie daisies.
Yeah, we just forgot to.
6 years now.
Do you remember that woman that called basically like said Susan Hussey was a racist? The one who founded that charity and got dressed up like what I can only describe as a fetish priest. She was like this woman of like Bayesian origin that created this. Ngozi Fulani. You know the one who went to the palace with like the whole get up. I don't know. She thought she was on the set of Black Panther.
Right.
And Prince William's godmother asked, "Okay, where are you from?" And she was like, "That was racist." And exactly. And I remember people saying, "Oh, that's so racist." I'm like, okay. Every person of a West African background is looking at this clown show. Like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Like, she chose a name that like doesn't like. She chose a tribe as her last name. Like, people don't name themselves tribes. That's like naming yourself Pencil.
Right.
Like it's so my mom looked at it, was like, she called herself Ngozi Fulani. So clearly this person is not from there.
Yeah.
And she had a charity. And because she went public with this saying, look at how how racist someone was, even though she didn't, they investigated a charity. She had to shut it down because there were some anomalies with the clearing of her accounts.
Yeah.
And I suspect this is probably going the same way.
I suspect so too. But anyway, this charity
doesn't make any sense.
Was founded by a guy called Brendan Cox. Brendan Cox is the husband, or was the husband, of Joe Cox, who was actually murdered by a far-right terrorist. So that was, I think, an interesting connection. And he runs a non-profit, which isn't a charity, called More in Common. And what they do, and this is what I think the particularly interesting thing, convince campaigners, politicians, and institutions of the benefits of a big tent approach and dissuading them from pursuing culture wars which serve no one.
We try and shut people up.
Yeah. We try to
big
divert
tent approaches.
the attention
What does that
away
even?
from. Well, what they're trying to say is the argument's already settled. We have had this discussion. We're going to endure Islamist terror attacks forever. And so this becomes a war of attrition.
Be quiet for the sake of diversity, basically.
Kind of, yeah.
Exactly what they told the Rochdale grooming gang victims.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
basically what he's saying. We're not. No. That's a culture war. We're not engaging in that. We've already had that. Now we're going to.
As if even culture wars don't matter. As if like you shouldn't live. We all don't live in a culture, and it doesn't.
Yeah. Values.
Exactly.
Conflict of values.
So bizarre.
But that's one of the things that really jumped out of me, because of course this is all about a conflict of values. There are some people who want to say, look, I think actually maybe the Islamist terrorists are not these free-floating radicals who just happen to keep coming out of this one community. And maybe there's a congenital problem in that community. And they say, well, that's a culture war and that makes you a racist and that's illiberal to do that. And therefore, the argument's been settled. We're going to do it this way. And so what you're going to have to do is just endure all of these terror attacks forever until the Islamists eventually just get tired or run out of bullets or something like that, because there is simply no other option.
But the vast majority of Muslims do what they do in Muslim countries and take them out themselves, in which case the paradigm has completely shifted.
And so when asked about this, the victims say, well, the real problem is the government. Have you considered that, Callum? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all on board with saying the real problem is the government, right? More than 130 survivors were surveyed by Survivors Against Terror, and they said, yep, the government was the issue. For example, one example is Joanne McSorley, who was hit by 31 pieces of shrapnel in the Manchester Arena bombing. She told the BBC that she was being degraded by being told to repeatedly prove the severity of her injuries, and after 6 years, the government finally gave her £25,000 as compensation.
For what?
She's for being permanently having life-altering disabilities imposed by the Manchester Arena bombing.
I don't think that's how that works, or it should work.
Well, she says, well, I'm housebound, and quote, I put my faith in the systems and in the government. This was a terror attack, so I thought, of course, would be well looked after, but this didn't happen.
Okay, so maybe your gripe is with the person that carried out the attack?
One might think so. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, I do think the UK government should fairly compensate these people. But
well, no, they should get rid of themselves for failing at their job.
The British government brought that bomber and his family.
Who was also of an asylum background. I'm just pointing that out.
And then gave him our money.
Yep.
To his mum, and his mum then gave the money to him to buy the bomb parts.
And then he went to the arena, and the security guard didn't address him because even though he thought he looked suspicious, he didn't want to be accused of being a racist. Then he blew up the bomb, killing 22 women and children and wounding many others. Joanne McSorley is one of those people, and she says, quote, I put my faith in the systems and in the government because I'm not being sufficiently compensated.
The system is working as intended, my friend. It literally
there are no words.
Paid for his bomb to kill people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly, genuinely, tremendously sympathetic to this woman, but like, if we can't see how we're trapped in this kind of cycle where, I mean, it's just, I feel like I'm being gaslit.
Well, it's a double whammy because on the one hand, we're not addressing the problem, the internal problems we have with lack of social integration and you know, the broken asylum system and all of that. And on the other hand, we're literally letting in unvetted, mostly single males into the country.
Yep.
Failed society.
And then,
failed.
And then she's got to spend 6 years arguing with a bureaucrat to get a measly 25,000.
She might as well have just got a job at Tesco.
Exactly. Well, she can't work.
Okay.
She's wounded from the attack that the government is not compensating her for, even though they brought.
Surely she's on disability benefits.
She's doubtless on disability benefits, but like, I think I agree that she is entitled to something, considering the government brought in the attacker, paid for him to be here, paid for him to get the bomb, and
ruined her life.
Yeah.
Ruined her life. Yeah. And it's awful. I mean, the guy who had the narwhal tusk on the London Bridge attack, Daryl Frost, an actual hero, I would say, has been like, yeah, well, I mean, it's a paper-based postal system. You don't get much response or, the interest of every bureaucrat is to do as little work as possible because they are not paid on performance. And actually, every single person who they have to deal with is an issue in their day, is a problem that they would just rather not have to deal with. And so, you know, they keep asking for more evidence. You feel like you're on trial or scrounging. It's like, yep. That's how the bureaucracy is going to deal with you. And so there's just this total recurring system of failure. And there's just this entire area of life you're not allowed to talk about.
Yep.
We just didn't import people like that guy. Where, to be clear for people, like him and his family in this particular case were fighting with an Islamic group against Gaddafi. And then we ended up labeling them terrorists after the revolution. But we brought him in anyway. I was like, right, okay, those guys are clearly going to end up being terrorists. Let's give them lots of tax money.
I don't think people realize how much worse this is about to get. I mean, the government had the audacity to brag about clearing the backlog of 67,000.
By just giving them...
But seriously, they have... I mean, they just fast-tracked them through.
Yeah.
Basically didn't... I don't even think they had face-to-face interviews with all of them.
I'd be shocked if they did.
But the way to break that circle of failure is just not to start the circle.
Yes.
Exactly. And to fix the mess you've already created at home.
But the thing is, I'm genuinely sympathetic to all of these people as well, because they are pawns in this process, right? They are the ones who are the victims of the attacks by people who were never invited in, but the government brought in anyway, and are not even being looked after. And all they can do is complain at the government, because if they identified the source of the terror, that would mean they're being anti-Muslim and they're hateful and they're calling all Muslims extremists and all this sort of stuff. So an actual conversation about why 2/3 to 3/4 of government anti-terror activity has to be focused on 6.5% of the population can never be addressed. And so that will never change. And all they can do is say, well, look, the bureaucrats are doing a bad job, which of course bureaucrats have always done a bad job.
I would love to pose that exact question you just had to anyone in Parliament, right? Okay, fine, you've given your speech. Why are 2/3 of the government's efforts focused on this particular community? Is it just a coincidence? And they probably might say that.
They have to say that. They're committed to it, because anything else is anti-Muslim hatred. To say, well, okay, maybe there's an ethic in that community that they would have to say no. It can't be a moral question. Because then,
oh no, look, we shouldn't be focusing on that. No, but I just want to ask, do you have any idea why?
Yeah, but the thing is, then it would be anyone who held that moral system would be implicated, and that is illiberal, and you can't do that. And so it's got to be that this is just an unspoken thing, and you're a racist.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Brokenomics series, this episode with Aaron McIntyre. If you'd like to find out what else has been put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.